My name is Riley Walker, and I'm 32. For a long time, I would have told anyone who asked that I was lucky, really lucky. Because Dylan Carter didn't just walk into a room. He arrived. He was the kind of man who made strangers laugh within minutes, who remembered bartenders' names, who leaned in like whatever you were saying was the most fascinating thing he'd heard all day. Dylan was charming in that effortless way that made people forgive him before he even apologized. And for 4 years, I thought that charm belonged to me. We'd been together 4 years, engaged for 6 months, and I had been completely sure I'd found my person. Not in a naive, fairy tale way, in a grown woman way. The kind of certainty that comes from building routines together, laundry and grocery runs, late night takeout on the couch, the private jokes that only make sense to two people who've shared real time. I wasn't blind. I knew Dylan liked attention. I knew he liked being admired. But I trusted him. Because whenever that little doubt tried to rise up, he always said the same thing. Soft voice, warm smile, like I was silly for even thinking it. "Riley," he'd say, brushing my hair back like he owned the right to soothe me. "I'd never actually cheat on you. I love you." So I believed him. Until the night that proved I was just another woman who got played. Only I didn't realize I'd been playing my role until I saw the footage. It was a Friday night, and I'd just gotten home from work, the kind of tired that sinks into your bones. I kicked off my shoes, loosened my ponytail, and headed straight for the kitchen like a robot running on habit. Dylan was already there, leaning against the counter like he didn't have a care in the world, twisting his watch around his wrist. He stretched dramatically, yawned like he was in a commercial. "God," he sighed, "I'm so exhausted. I think I'm just going to shower and head to bed early." I remember watching him take out his earrings. No, not earrings. That's how my brain used to describe the things my old partner did. Dylan didn't take out earrings. He took off his bracelet, his rings, that stupid chain he wore like it made him mysterious. I smiled anyway. "Yeah," I said, voice light. "You deserve a break. Want me to make you some tea?" "Nah," he said, already walking away. "I'll probably be asleep in 10 minutes. He kissed me on the forehead, quick, automatic, almost careless, and disappeared into the bedroom, shutting the door behind him like that was the end of the night. And for a few minutes, I believed it was. I grabbed a drink, opened Netflix, and sank into the couch. I didn't think twice. Not until my phone buzzed. One vibration, then the second. And suddenly, the living room didn't feel warm anymore. I wasn't expecting any messages, so when my phone lit up with a Snapchat from Emily Hayes, I almost ignored it. Emily wasn't even my friend. Technically, she was Dylan's ex-girlfriend. And if you're thinking that sounds like a recipe for disaster, you're not wrong. But Dylan had insisted that they were cool, that they'd moved past it, that Emily was in the group, and it would be immature to make it weird. So I swallowed my discomfort and let her exist at the edges of our life like a shadow you learn to live with. That's why seeing her name on my screen made my stomach tighten. I opened it without thinking, and my entire body went cold. The video was from inside a nightclub. Loud music, flashing lights, a crowd of people packed close together, Dylan's friends laughing and dancing. And right in the middle of it all, Dylan. Not home, not asleep, at a club. And he wasn't just there. He was wrapped around a woman like he'd done it 1,000 times, his hand at her waist, her fingers sliding over his chest, their faces too close, mouths near each other's ears, intimate in that way people get when they think the world can't touch them. He looked comfortable, like this wasn't a mistake, like this was routine. The video cut off after a few seconds, but my hand stayed frozen around my phone like it had turned to ice. My heart didn't race. It didn't shatter dramatically the way movies promise. It just sank. Deep, quiet, heavy. I stared at the screen for a full minute, trying to convince myself I didn't see what I saw. Like if I blinked hard enough, my brain would rearrange the truth into something softer. Then I texted him. Me, "Hey, you still up?" A response came instantly. Dylan, "Hey babe, no, already in bed. Why?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was horrifying how easy it was for him. No hesitation, no delay, no guilt creeping into his words. Just a clean, confident lie. And that's when something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, clarity. Because in that moment, I realized something worse than cheating. He didn't even respect me enough to be careful. He thought he could do whatever he wanted, and I'd never question it. He thought I was stupid, or maybe he thought I was too in love to do anything about it. And right then, sitting alone in our living room, with Netflix still playing like nothing had changed, I made a decision so calm it scared me. I wasn't going to confront him like a heartbroken girlfriend. I was going to expose him like the liar he was. But first, I needed to be sure. So I started digging. Dylan loves social media. He posted gym selfies, group shots, dinner plates, club nights, always smiling, always shining. I scrolled back through months of posts, my thumb moving like it belonged to someone else. And then I saw her, the same woman from the Snapchat. Not always front and center, sometimes in the background, sometimes cropped like she didn't matter, sometimes tagged by someone else like an accident. But she was there, again and again, woven into his life like a thread he never bothered to cut. And the comments? They weren't flirty. They were worse. Inside jokes, references, things that made it obvious they had history. On one group photo, the woman commented, "Best night ever. You still owe me for that dare." Dylan replied, "Shut up, that wasn't my fault." Another friend chimed in, "Can't believe he actually did it. Iconic." I didn't know what it was, but I had a pretty good guess. My hands were shaking when I opened our phone plan account. Dylan and I were on the same plan, which meant I could see call records. And there it was. Her number. Late night calls that lasted over an hour. Texts almost every day. A pattern that stretched back over a year. This wasn't one drunken mistake. This was a second life. By the time morning came, I hadn't slept. I just lay there beside Dylan, staring at the ceiling while he breathed peacefully, like a man with nothing to hide. When he finally woke up, he stretched and smiled at me like I was his safe place. "Morning, babe." I swallowed down the anger in my throat until it tasted like metal. "Hey," I said softly. "Sleep well?" He nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Yeah, out like a light." He didn't even flinch. That was the part that made me feel sick. Not the club, not the woman. The ease. I grabbed my phone, scrolled like I was bored, then asked casually, "Weren't you supposed to stay in last night?" His expression didn't change. "Yeah," he said. "I did. Just went to bed early." No hesitation. So I pulled up the Snapchat and held it out. For a split second, I saw real fear flicker across his face. Then he recovered, fast. He let out a small laugh, rolling his eyes like I'd shown him something ridiculous. "Oh my God," he said, "you're being dramatic." Dramatic. Like my reality was a performance. "It was a game, Riley," he added, waving a hand. "We were doing dares. It wasn't serious." My blood boiled so hot I felt oddly calm again. "A game," I repeated. So lying to my face was part of the game too? He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was exhausting him. "You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. I didn't sleep with anyone. We were just having fun." He wasn't sorry. He was annoyed. And I could see it, clear as glass, that he was counting on me reacting exactly the way he wanted, crying, yelling, begging, so he could call me unstable, so he could walk away as the calm one. So I did the opposite. I took a deep breath, nodded, and smiled like I believed him. "You're right," I said quietly. "I overreacted." He blinked. "Wait, what?" "It was just a game," I added, voice gentle. "No big deal." I watched his shoulders loosen, watched relief spread across his face. He bought it. He actually believed he'd gotten away with it. And that's when my real decision became permanent. I wasn't just going to leave Dylan. I was going to humiliate him. I was going to make sure everyone saw exactly who he was, before he could rewrite the story and make me the villain. And as Dylan rolled toward me, already reaching like he deserved comfort, my phone buzzed again. A message from Emily. 3 words. "I'm sorry, Riley." And something told me that Snapchat wasn't as accidental as Dylan would like to believe. Emily's message sat on my screen like a confession and a warning at the same time. "I'm sorry, Riley." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't trust myself to type anything that wouldn't expose what I was planning. My hands were steady, but my thoughts weren't. They moved in sharp, clean lines now, like my brain had switched into survival mode and decided feelings were a luxury I couldn't afford. Beside me, Dylan had already relaxed back into the pillow, satisfied. He thought he'd smoothed it over. Thought my little burst of drama was done. That smug calm on his face made my stomach twist. He rolled closer, pressing a lazy kiss against my shoulder, like he hadn't just lied to me with a straight face. "See," he murmured, "we're fine." Fine. That word used to mean safe, warm, home. Now it sounded like a threat. I slid out of bed and walked to the kitchen on autopilot. I made coffee the way I always did. Measured scoops, boiling water, the quiet hum of routine, because routine was the only thing keeping me from shaking apart. Dylan wandered in 10 minutes later, shirtless, yawning dramatically, like the world owed him sympathy. "You want to talk about brunch?" he asked, like the biggest decision we had to make today was waffles versus pancakes. I looked at him and felt something I hadn't expected. Not heartbreak, disgust. The way he moved through our space like he owned it, like he deserved it, like I was lucky to be the woman standing beside him. Sure, I said, voice even. Brunch sounds great. His smile widened, satisfied. He had no idea that the wedding he'd been so excited to show off, the one he used as proof of how committed he was about to become the stage where I ended him. All day I played my part. I laughed at his jokes. I nodded when he brought up seating charts. I responded to his messages with little hearts and miss you like my entire life hadn't cracked open overnight. Every time he looked away, I was doing something else. Saving, screenshotting, organizing. Because if Dylan had taught me anything, it was that the truth didn't matter unless you could prove it. And proof was something he couldn't flirt his way out of. When he showered, I sat at the dining table with my laptop and opened a folder I'd never needed before. I named it Wedding. A small, bitter laugh slipped out of me as I typed it. The folder filled quickly. Screenshots of the Snapchat video from Emily. A screenshot of Dylan's text, "Already in bed, babe?" Call logs from our phone plan showing the woman's number recurring like a heartbeat. Instagram posts with the same face showing up again and again, always too close. I didn't know the woman's name yet. In Emily's video, she was just a blur of hair and laughter, and the way Dylan's hand gripped her waist like it belonged there. But I would find out. I always did. By midday, Dylan left to run errands, which in the past would have meant picking up something for the apartment, maybe grabbing coffee with a friend. Now I wondered how many errands were excuses. The moment the door clicked shut, I opened Snapchat again. Emily's message was still there. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "Was it really an accident?" The response came almost immediately. "Emily, no." Just one word. My chest tightened. I waited, watching the little typing bubble appear, disappear, appear again. Then, "Emily, I didn't know how to tell you. I should have told you sooner." I read that line 3 times. It wasn't just guilt I heard. It was fear. Because the thing about men like Dylan, men who know how to charm and spin and twist the narrative, is they don't just cheat. They control the story afterward. They make the betrayed person look irrational and jealous while they step away clean. Emily had been on the other side of that once, and now it sounded like she was trying to crawl out of it. I typed, "Who is she?" Another pause. Then, "Emily. Her name is Madison Blake. She works with him. Sort of. Same circles. He calls her Mads." Madison. The name dropped into my head like a stone. I clicked through Dylan's followers and started searching. It didn't take long. There she was. Madison Blake. Private account. Profile picture. A polished smile. Expensive hair. The kind of woman who curated her life into something glossy and untouchable. I sat back, staring at her picture, my mind filling in details I didn't actually know. I hated that. I hated how my brain wanted to blame her first, because it was easier than accepting the truth about the man lying in my bed. So I stopped myself. This wasn't about Madison. This was about Dylan. Madison might be a willing participant, or she might be another woman being fed the same lies. Either way, Dylan was the common denominator, and he was the one I was going to burn. I locked my phone and took a deep breath. Then I opened the wedding group chat. It had been created months ago when planning felt exciting. When Dylan and I were still making decisions like a team, venues, flowers, colors, playlists, like we were building a future instead of decorating the ruins. The chat was massive. Over 100 people. Friends, family, coworkers, cousins who barely knew us, but still wanted free cake. Back then, it felt like community. Now, it looked like an audience. I scrolled slowly, my thumb gliding over names. My mother, Carol Walker. My father, Tom Walker. Dylan's mom, Patricia Carter. Dylan's dad, George Carter. Dylan's best man, his loudmouth college buddy, Ryan Stokes. My maid of honor, Jenna Ruiz. And then, people who mattered for a different reason. Dylan's workplace friends. A couple of coworkers he'd insisted were like family. A manager whose name I recognized because Dylan had mentioned him more than once, Ethan Marks. If Dylan cared about anything as much as he cared about attention, it was his reputation. At work, he wore a different mask. Responsible, polished, dependable. He loved being admired there too. And if I was going to collapse his world, I needed the right witnesses. I didn't want just gossip. I wanted consequences. The thought made me inhale sharply. Was I really going to do this? The old version of me, soft, loyal, always trying to talk things out, would have begged for an apology, would have believed a promise, would have swallowed the humiliation and tried to save the dream wedding because admitting it was dead would hurt too much. But I wasn't that Riley anymore. Not after he looked into my eyes and lied like it was nothing. Not after he called me dramatic for reacting like a human being. I set the phone down and walked to the mirror in the hallway. The woman staring back at me looked normal. Hair in a loose ponytail, bare face, tired eyes. But there was something different in them now. A stillness, a kind of quiet rage that didn't need to scream to be dangerous. I leaned closer and whispered to my reflection, barely audible, "You don't get to make me small." When Dylan came home later, he was in a great mood. Of course he was. In his mind, he'd won. He tossed his keys into the bowl, wrapped his arms around me from behind, and kissed my neck like that would erase the taste of his lies. "Hey," he said, voice soft, almost playful. "Want to order dinner? Maybe watch something?" I nodded against him. "Sounds perfect." He pulled back to look at me. "You're not mad anymore?" I met his eyes and gave him a smile so convincing it scared even me. "No," I said, "I'm not mad." And that was the truth. Because anger would have meant I still wanted to fix him. I didn't. I wanted to finish him. That night, while Dylan slept beside me, peaceful, unaware, breathing the way people do when they think they're safe, I lay awake staring at the ceiling again. But this time I wasn't spiraling. I was planning. I reached for my phone and opened the group chat. My thumb hovered over the add members option, and one by one I invited the people Dylan would fear the most, knowing the truth. His parents, his coworkers, his manager, even a woman whose name I'd never noticed before, saved in his contacts as boss's assistant. I didn't know if she'd matter, but Dylan had always cared too much about who was watching, so I made sure the right people were. When I was done, the group chat looked the same. A list of names. A digital room full of faces. A silent crowd. I set an alarm for 6:58 a.m. Then I opened my notes app and typed the message I would send. Short, simple, unescapable. Wedding canceled. Cheater alert. My finger hovered over the words as if they were a blade. And in the dark, with Dylan sleeping next to me, like he hadn't just tried to erase my reality, I felt the first real tremor of something else. Not sadness, not fear, relief. Because the moment I pressed send, the pretending would be over. And Dylan would finally learn what it felt like to be blindsided. I closed my eyes and waited for morning. My alarm went off at 6:58 a.m. The sound sliced cleanly through the quiet like a blade. Dylan didn't stir. He slept on his back, mouth slightly open, one arm flung toward my side of the bed like he expected me to still be there when he woke up, like the world was exactly the way he left it. I sat up slowly, careful not to wake him. My phone felt heavier than it ever had in my hand. I walked into the kitchen, the cold tile biting at my feet, and poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink. My heart wasn't pounding. That surprised me. I'd expected adrenaline, shaking hands, something cinematic. Instead, there was a calm so deep it felt unnatural. I checked the time. 6:59 a.m. The group chat icon stared back at me, familiar and harmless looking. Months ago, this chat had been filled with excitement. Venue photos, dress fittings, joking arguments over chicken versus beef. Now it was a loaded weapon. I opened my notes one last time and reread the message. No edits. No softening. No apologies. At 7 a.m., I pressed send. For a split second, nothing happened. Then my phone vibrated. One notification. Then another. Then another. The message sat there in the chat, clean and impossible to miss. Wedding canceled. Cheater alert. Hey everyone. Just wanted to let you know that the wedding is officially canceled. Turns out my fiancé wasn't going to bed early last night. He was at a club, lying to my face while getting close with another woman. Thanks to a Snapchat sent to me by accident, I now know this wasn't the first time. For those who want proof, I've attached it here. I won't be marrying a cheater. Attached beneath the text was the video. Emily's Snapchat. The truth, in flashing lights and crowded music and Dylan's hands on someone who wasn't me. I set my phone down on the counter and waited. It took less than 2 minutes. Patricia Carter. Dylan, what is this? George Carter. Please tell me this isn't true. Ryan Stokes. Holy sh. Someone left the group. Then another. My phone buzzed nonstop, vibrating so hard it rattled against the countertop like it was alive. I didn't answer a single call. Behind me, in the bedroom, Dylan's phone started buzzing too. Once. Twice. Then relentlessly. A low groan came from the bedroom. What the hell? He muttered. I took a sip of my coffee, finally, and leaned back against the counter, just as Dylan stumbled into the kitchen, hair a mess, phone clutched in his hand. Then he looked at the screen and screamed. Not yelled, not cursed. He screamed like someone had dropped him into ice water. What did you do? He shouted, eyes wild as he spun toward me. Riley, what the hell is this? I looked at him over the rim of my mug. Oh, I said calmly. I let everyone know the wedding's off. His voice cracked. You posted that in the group chat. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah. You can't do that! He lunged toward me, reaching for my phone. Delete it. Delete it right now. I stepped back easily, holding the phone out of reach. No. He froze. For a second, I saw it, the moment where his brain finally caught up to reality. This wasn't a fight he could flirt his way out of. His phone buzzed again. He glanced down, face draining of color. It's my mom, he whispered. He answered it because she said pacing. Mom, I can explain. Whatever Patricia Carter said on the other end, I couldn't hear. But I saw Dylan's shoulders sag. His voice dropped, frantic. No, that's not. Listen. Then the call ended. He stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. His phone rang again. This time I recognized the number on my screen. George Carter. Dylan looked up at me, panic setting in. It's my dad, he said. Riley, please. I answered. Hello? There was a pause, a long one. Then George Carter's voice, tight and controlled. Riley, is this real? Yes, I said simply. Another pause. I'm so sorry, he said. Not angrily, not defensively. You didn't deserve this. My throat tightened despite myself. I know, I replied. He exhaled sharply. We'll handle Dylan. And then he hung up. Dylan stared at me like I'd just destroyed him with a single word. You ruined me, he said, voice shaking. Do you have any idea what you just did? My parents, my job, my entire life. I shrugged, a small movement that seemed to enrage him even more. I guess you should have thought about that before lying to my face. He dragged his hands through his hair, breathing fast. You didn't have to humiliate me like this, he snapped. This could have been private. That almost made me laugh. Private? I echoed. You mean like you privately lied to me? Or privately held another woman at a club while telling me you were asleep? His phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Dylan sank onto a chair, staring at the screen as messages piled up faster than he could read them. Some angry, some shocked, some silent, but that silence spoke louder than anything else. Then my phone buzzed with a new notification. A text. From Emily. It's done. I'm sorry it had to be like this, but thank you for not letting him rewrite the story. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Across the room, Dylan looked up at me, desperation breaking through his anger. Okay, he said quickly, standing again. Okay, you made your point. You got your revenge. Can we fix this now? Fix this. Like it was a broken appliance. What exactly do you want to fix? I asked. He gestured wildly. The wedding, the group chat, the posts. People are already sharing it online. You need to tell them it was a misunderstanding. I laughed. A short, sharp sound. A misunderstanding? I said. You told me you were in bed while you were at a club with another woman. What part did I misunderstand? He clenched his jaw. Riley, people are overreacting. We can talk this through. Oh, I said softly. Now you want to talk. He froze. Because he knew. Yesterday, when I confronted him, he'd brushed me off, called me dramatic, made it about my feelings instead of his actions. But now that he was the one bleeding in public, now suddenly communication mattered. I shook my head. I don't want to fix this, I said. He stared at me like he couldn't process the words. I don't think about you the way I used to, I continued, calm and final. And I'm not going to pretend anymore. I walked past him, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Riley, he called after me, voice breaking. Please. I didn't stop. Because behind me, Dylan Carter wasn't losing a fiancé. He was losing the story he'd built where he was always the good guy. And this time, there was no way to spin it. I didn't go far. I drove until the shaking finally started, until my hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot because it was the closest place where I could sit still without breaking apart. That was when my phone started ringing again. Not Dylan. Everyone else. I watched the screen light up over and over. Names I recognized, names I didn't, numbers with no contact attached. My phone felt radioactive. I let it buzz itself quiet while I stared straight ahead, chest rising and falling too fast. When I finally checked it, the damage was already spreading. The group chat had become chaos. Some people were asking questions. Some were expressing shock. Others, mostly Dylan's friends, had gone silent, which told me everything I needed to know. And then I saw it. A screenshot. Someone had taken my message and posted it to Facebook. The caption read, "Imagine blowing up your entire wedding for a random hookup at a club. Wild." The comments were brutal. Did he think she wouldn't find out? This is secondhand embarrassing. His poor parents. She dodged a bullet. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt light, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been ripped away. Back at the apartment, Dylan was unraveling. He called me 12 times in under an hour, left voicemails that shifted tone with each one. Angry, pleading, panicked. By the time I returned to pack my things, his voice was hoarse and his eyes were red. He followed me from room to room while I filled a suitcase, talking nonstop like silence might kill him. "You didn't have to do this," he said again, pacing. "This didn't need to be public." I didn't look at him. "You made it public when you did it." "I didn't sleep with her," he insisted. "You're acting like I committed some unforgivable crime." I finally turned to him then. "Unforgivable?" I said. "No, just unlivable." He stared at me, stunned. "You lied," I continued. "You minimized it. You called me dramatic. And you expected me to swallow it so you could do it again." He opened his mouth, then closed it, because this time there was nothing left to say. By the end of the day, the fallout was real. His parents cut off financial help they'd quietly been giving him. His friends split cleanly, some backing away, some clinging harder out of loyalty. At work, his manager sent a message asking to talk in person. The wedding venue refused to refund the deposit, and because my name was on the lease too, Dylan had 30 days to move out. That night, my phone buzzed with one final message. "Dylan, I messed up. I miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it, because some conversations don't bring closure. They just reopen wounds that finally learned how to heal. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. A week passed. Then another. The noise faded slowly. Not all at once, but in waves. First, the nonstop buzzing of my phone stopped. Then the messages turned from urgent to awkward. Then people stopped asking questions altogether and started making quiet assumptions instead. That was when I knew the story had settled, and Dylan had lost. I moved into a short-term rental across town, a place with white walls and too much light and no memories attached to it. The first night there, I sat on the floor with my suitcase still half unpacked and realized something unsettling. I didn't miss him. Not his laugh, not his voice, not even the version of him I thought I loved. What I missed, if I was honest, was the woman I used to be when I thought I was safe. That realization hurt more than the betrayal, because it meant I hadn't just lost a fiancé. I'd lost time. News traveled fast in ways I hadn't anticipated. Dylan's manager requested a professional conduct meeting. No official punishment, at least not publicly, but the warmth Dylan once bragged about at work disappeared overnight. Promotions don't go to men whose names are whispered with pity or discomfort. Friends chose sides without announcing it. Some people I thought were our people stopped responding entirely. Others reached out quietly, apologetically. A few admitted they'd known things weren't right. "I didn't want to get involved," one text read. I understood that sentence now better than I ever wanted to. Emily messaged me again once. She told me Dylan had done the same thing to her. Late nights, excuses, gaslighting, until she started doubting her own instincts. She said she'd carried guilt for months, knowing he was engaged, knowing I existed just outside the frame of his lies. "I didn't send the Snapchat to hurt you," she wrote. "I sent it because I couldn't watch him do it again." I believed her. Because shame recognizes shame. Dylan tried one last time. A voicemail late at night, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I know I don't deserve this," he said, "but I just need you to know, I really thought you'd forgive me." I deleted it without listening again. That was the moment everything clicked into place. He hadn't loved me the way I loved him. He loved the version of me that forgave. The version that absorbed damage quietly so he could walk away untouched. That woman didn't exist anymore. The wedding date came and went. No dress, no vows, no aisle. I spent that day alone by choice, walking through a park with my phone turned off, breathing in a life that felt unfamiliar but honest. It wasn't triumphant. It wasn't dramatic. It was peaceful. And peace, I realized, is what people like Dylan fear the most, because it can't be manipulated. I don't tell this story because I'm proud of the exposure. I tell it because I'm proud I didn't let myself disappear to protect someone who never protected me. Some people call what I did revenge. I don't. I call it refusing to carry someone else's shame. And that was the day I stopped being Riley the fiancé and became just Riley Walker again.